Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final episode of this series of Claims Corner. And it's focusing on the new business norm of collaboration. And we've got a fantastic discussion ahead today. So we've got Alan Demers, the president and founder of InsurTech Consulting. And speaking with him is Don Jones, head of claims at MassMutual. So without further ado, I will hand over to Don and Alan.
Hey everyone, Alan Demers here. Hope you're all doing well and staying safe from your offices or wherever you may be. But glad to be here with you today and looking forward to this discussion with Don. And we want to keep it real casual, much like how we're working in our home offices. A little bit about me. I have a 30-plus year background in claims and work for two top 10 insurance companies. And I've spent the last 4 or 5 years focused solely on claims innovation and InsurTech. So currently the owner and founder of InsurTech Consulting, and I spend a lot of my time with startups and other providers who are trying to enter or expand in the insurance world, mostly in claims. So that's a little bit about me. Don, why don't you tell them about yourself?
Well, thank you, Alan, and good morning, everybody. Great to be here, and also want to echo those sentiments and hoping everybody and their families are safe and sound, and everybody's doing well during these interesting times. But I'm also excited to be here to have this conversation about collaboration. And just a little bit about me. I'm the head of claims for MassMutual, and I've been in the industry about 28 years. And like Alan, I've worked for two top 10 firms during the course of my career. Recently, again, I head up the claims operation for the U.S. operations at MassMutual, where we service lines of business relative to life, disability, income, annuity, long-term care, and life waiver. So I have the great opportunity of working with a variety of great business partners, both internally and externally, trying to, obviously do what we're all trying to do out here in the industry from a claims perspective in terms of delivering that personalized experience in new and exciting ways. And I often find, forums like this just to be very valuable in terms of just gaining insights and additional information in terms of how we can just kind of try to, reinvent ourselves from a claims perspective every chance that we get. So again, I'm also excited just to have this conversation, and hopefully we'll be able to all walk away with some really good insights. So thank you.
Good point, Don. I think about the reinventing ourselves comment. And, so one of the things that I think people are talking about every day is, what's ahead for claims innovation or InsurTech and claims. We're all hearing people say, what's the new normal going to look like? And, how are we going to go out in public in restaurants? And so it's a daily conversation. And I think the same applies for insurance claims and InsurTech. So what's ahead? Not only, long-term, but in the weeks and months remaining in 2020. So I think that's an area we could talk about.
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. That's a great point. And when you kind of think about our current situation with the coronavirus and, how you just kind of find like society right now just kind of seems to be trapped in what you might call an ember and just kind of frozen in time right now, due to the pandemic. And I think right now this gives us a really great opportunity just to try to, from a technology standpoint and a digital standpoint, just to try to get even faster in that space as we start to come out of this, environment. Right now you have changes around the world just occurring at light speed. And I think the global pandemic to some extent has kind of been an accelerant. If you think about it, throwing the flames of progress and calling into mind a famous quote that Lenin once had, there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen. And I think that's kind of what we're feeling like right now. But, from an industry perspective, I just think that, we're going to have a unique opportunity as we kind of navigate ourselves through this current environment, or the new normal, if you will, just to really kind of look at our business a lot differently and really just kind of, call into question some of the things that we may have been putting on the back burner prior to the coronavirus, emanating. And, just really taking a lot of lessons learned as we kind of emerge from this, and really just being for the better, and really having an opportunity just to kind of, scale our business operations and our business model in new and inviting ways to our customers and the firms that we support and that we operate within. So for me, it's
Yeah.
just going to be really interesting to see that, whatever lessons that we can learn, that will just be even stronger from it in the end.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of this mix of it's a bit scary and daunting. It's also an exciting time. And, you just think of the way businesses are shifting on the fly and they're experimenting and innovating to make things happen. Um, so I kind of look at, one of my favorite things in life besides insurance claims is what's going to happen tonight. And tonight for sports fans, the NFL draft, and they're doing it virtually. And when you look at the sports world as a comparison, you just hear all the chatter of what MLB wants to do to start their baseball season and how the NBA is thinking about their playoffs. And it's just this a massive amount of creativity. So I think the same applies for insurance claims in that we're in this environment right now, and it's a great time to be experimenting and to see what works. And so the good news here is, there already was a trend in investment and focus on, self-service and, virtual claim inspection for damages and remote claim handling. But, that's all been taken up a notch. And I just think we have a great environment right now where customers are a bit pliable and flexible and willing to try things. And companies need to be doing that as well.
You may have faded out there a little bit, Alan. Can you hear me?
No, and you'll have to excuse that. It sounds like a helicopter landed in one of our home offices. What it is. But what I was saying there is that, again, I think it's a great time to be experimenting and trying to promote digital adoption, because customers are more willing than ever. And certainly from just the employee and customer safety perspective. So I don't know what your thoughts are about that, but certainly, it's an opportune time as well.
Oh, absolutely. I also think, to your point about self-service and digital adoption, I do think there may have been some challenges in the past that may be fast-tracked right now from a consumer perspective. If you look across the demographics, whether, you're a millennial or baby boomer or Gen X or Gen Z now, I think there are going to be different levels of comfort when you talk about self-service. But I think in our current environment right now, I think people are kind of, if they were kind of, reserved in the past in terms of using self-service and doing things on their own from a digital perspective, I think we're all kind of being forced in that environment right now. Contactless, deliveries. When you want to order takeout for your family today, and going to the supermarkets, and folks just trying to do more with less, so that way they can essentially stay safe. And I think we can use these learnings in this current environment to really kind of give us some insights into how do we just accelerate that digital adoption from a consumer perspective. And I think, as consumers understand the benefits and they can realize those benefits, I think it's easier for them to really kind of be more comfortable with some of those self-service options. So that's why I kind of talked about earlier, just some of the lessons learned, not only from a carrier or an industry perspective, but also from a consumer perspective. I think there's going to be a lot of shifting and adapting and adjusting as we kind of move forward.
No question. And I had this conversation yesterday with an executive from a large insurance company, one of the top 10 globally. And, we were all chatting about working from home and using Zoom and video tools and how that's changing things. And he said to me, one of the benefits with inside his own company was just the level of cooperation and how much people were focused on trying to run the business. And he says, as odd as this may sound, I'm hoping that we take some of the way we're working together in COVID and we bring that forward. And it made me think about, from my claim background, whenever we had a catastrophe scenario, it was amazing how much the claim organization, the outside providers, vendors, and even the customers and agents, how well everyone tried to work together. So that, again, is to me another ingredient or another seize the moment opportunities that are right before us because of that vibe. But it just seems like it's a good time to be thinking about bringing those faculties together.
Yeah, absolutely. And, even from, an operational perspective, even at within my organization, not just within claims, but even outside of claims, we've been in this environment for about a month now, maybe 5, 6 weeks for some of us, because we got started a little bit early. But I think we're taking a hard look at all of our processes and how we're doing things, and we're starting to ask hard questions about why do we do things that way? Is it because it's comfortable for us? Is it because it's comfortable from an operational perspective? And really putting more of a lens on the consumer and what's really right for them. Now, everybody's in that aspect of trying to reduce costs and operationalize to the extent where we can deliver that exceptional customer experience. But I think right now we have a great opportunity to start really questioning why we do things. And I think this is, again, fast-tracked our thought process in terms of being more adaptable and agile, in terms of really kind of bringing some of the things we may have put on the back burner maybe, 60 days ago or a year ago, and really fast tracking those things up to the top of the list and starting to change how we just think about our business. And we think about delivering service and we think about delivering value. So, again, for me, this is just a great time to look at all of those, connective points and how we can just really continue to move the needle in terms of technology and all of the disruption that's maybe going on within and outside our industry.
Yeah, that makes me think about, you made the comment, look at ourselves and question why we do these things. It made me think about some of the business rules. And again, using the catastrophe analogy, during a catastrophe, some of the conventional ways of doing things have to go out the window, and you're much more in a emergency and response mode. You've heard, different medical experts talk about that with COVID. Things are a little unconventional. So, same applies here. Is one of the challenges I had in a prior life trying to innovate claims was we kept bumping up against our conventional business rules and process and way of doing things. And every time we look at a different technology, you'd say, well, am I really going to get the benefit from innovating, just a small pocket claim process? Or, the claim process itself may be a bit of Here's the helicopter again. Glad it only passes by. So I'm not sure about it. Thanks for bearing with us, folks, on that background noise. But anyway, it does make you think about, that's another lever you can pull right now, is if you're looking at, well, how are we operating under business continuity? And while it's maybe not a long-term way of doing business, what are the things that we're doing that we don't need to do in the future environment? How can we maybe innovate around that a little bit? So that kind of gets me excited, is I think, workforces have had to change just overnight, and we're finding all different ways to serve customers. Can that be taken into some future planning and having some SureTech to really bring that to life?
Yeah, so really good point, Alan. And for me, when I think about the claims value proposition, for me, it really starts from three pillars, the value that we bring and that we need to deliver, whether it's now or well into the future. I think about speed. Obviously, you want to get people paid as quickly as possible. You think about efficiency, and we just want to make sure we're streamlining our processes and how we do things end to end from a customer perspective and through their lens, and then also transparency. And just making sure that, we can utilize technology and advanced analytics and data and all of the things that we have at our fingertips, both internally and externally, to really kind of drive that exceptional experience and really kind of drive those innovations. I think now more so than ever, the collaboration is going to be even more important, not only with inside our firms, but outside our firms with external business partners, such as InsurTechs. And companies that are well positioned to really go after innovation in a unique way. Sometimes when I think about my career and I think about some of the, I would say continuous improvement initiatives I've been a part of. When you work in sometimes a large company, sometimes you can get bogged down by a lot of bureaucracy and things that just kind of slow you down. And I think that's the fun thing about InsurTech. It's just an environment of innovation, collaboration, and fast failures, and just really being in a position to try to think outside the box, outside the norms, and stretching that innovation bandwidth, if you will. So I think the collaboration piece right now is only going to get that much more exciting from a claims and an insurance perspective as we kind of work through this new normal from a business perspective.
Yeah, no question. And InsurTech plays such a huge role in all this because they're the pioneers out finding the solutions and investing and, getting the support they need to take their solution to market, which is no easy task. And, one of the things I see about the InsurTech landscape and where it's been pre-COVID is, starting to see some really neat things shaped up around claims. Some of the earlier focus has been on distribution and digital and in those areas. Claims in the last year or so seems like it's really getting more attention. And so, hopefully some of those trends will continue, but, realistically, I think we have to assume some of the funding could be disrupted going into InsurTech in the first place. But the stakes seem higher too, Don, because, insurance companies, I would think, and I'd like to get your perspective on this, would be presumably more interested in things that are going to really help them near term and are going to help them solve some of the problems that are out there today. And so again, I think about, self-service in claims, employee safety. So that maybe means more remote and virtual claim handling, giving the customer more access. Those kind of things come to mind. And again, the good news is the industry was already trending in that direction. But, what are your thoughts about where you kind of place your bets from an InsurTech landscape? Does that change, or does it start to sharpen? I'd just be interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, I do think it changes to some degree because I think a lot of firms, a lot of companies now are in a position where we have to kind of reevaluate our priorities and again, really just kind of reevaluating our business models and how we scale. And I think when you think about how we scaled yesterday and how we need to scale tomorrow, coming out of the pandemic and coming into this new normal, if you will, I think we have to be open to really collaborating with not just InsurTechs, but maybe even with firms and companies that don't even look like us. I think there's also collaboration opportunities with some of our competitors and maybe trying to establish consortiums, if you will, when it makes sense, when you can still compete, obviously, and not, violate any sort of trade secrets or proprietary information, because, everybody's trying to compete to gain more revenue and market share, et cetera, and value. But I do think there may have been some constraints placed on a lot of companies and a lot of industries historically. And I think now, if you're going to compete in a new way, you have to start to maybe look at the world in a different way. And I think that's what this pandemic has done for us. Not to belabor the point, but I just think our current environment, our current time, our present time, I should say, I think is really going to stretch the imagination of the C-suite. I think it's going to stretch the imagination of companies. I think it's going to stretch the imagination, it should, of employees and also customers. And I think, when you can have insights into all of that, and you can have all of those connective dots start to make sense in terms of what are the customers' needs and preferences, and how is that changing and how is that evolving, even more so now in today's time. I think it lends itself to really just being in a position just to really stretch your collaboration bandwidth, if you will, and just making sure that you start involving corners of the business that you probably wouldn't have 60 or 90 days ago, or maybe even a year ago.
That really resonates. And when you think of, again, what's happening here, whole industries have had to, they've either been forced to cooperate or they've done it just because of the good of humanity. You think of the pharmaceutical companies and that industry and how they're all pulling together. And, I'm not naive, it's still a competitive landscape, but, they're doing more work together. The whole insurance industry kind of came together when, different companies started offering rebates for auto insurance premiums and things like that. And while each one does it a little bit differently, it was good to see the industry come together and say this is the right thing to do. And, again, that's another one of those vibes you like to see going forward. I tend to look at the InsurTech space and think the same holds true there. And I thought this before COVID and still think it's relevant today, which is because there's so many InsurTechs out there all offering different solutions, you're starting to see some of those pair up where, two solutions combined make for a bigger impact. And it seems like that would make it easier for, you or, in your capacity at Mass Mutual, for example, does that make it easier for you to say yes or to work with InsurTech? Because otherwise you have to look at all the different pieces and parts and try to put them together yourself. Just be interested.
Yeah. Yeah, and just so you know, from a Mass Mutual perspective, Mass Mutual has they're heavily invested in InsurTech, and they do have those partnerships as a firm and as a company, which is great to see. And I would be disappointed if we didn't. And obviously, when you think about all of the different tentacles that make up our firm, from underwriting to product to marketing to claims, it's ever more so important just to be able to tap into and leverage those, I would say, capabilities, those insights, those areas of expertise, and also making those strategic bets, those strategic investments in the right places. Because, and that's where I wanted to talk about next. I just think about, as an industry, as any firm, I think the bets that you made, again, prior to where we are today, I think those strategic bets are going to look a lot different moving forward, and they should. Because, it's going to be interesting to see how our society really kind of morphs from this. From my perspective, and I'll just talk claims a little bit. I mean, from an operational view, we still have a lot of manual processes. We still do a lot of things that we were doing 10 years ago. And even from a DI perspective, I can talk about that specifically real quickly. When you think about trying to handle a disability claim and trying to get the IMEs and the APSs, the attending physician statements, and all of the information you need to adjudicate that claim, and I'm starting to think, how can we be doing that differently? If I've got people working more remotely and virtually, and how can we use technology just to be more efficient? And so from my perspective, I think, if I can start having those insights and conversations with business partners within Mass Mutual, whether I look at my data science partners or I look at companies outside of Mass Mutual, InsurTechs, to kind of give me that broader view, I think that just puts me in a much stronger position to start to transform that claims value proposition from being a traditional back office support channel to now how do we transition to being a profit center. And I think that's the interesting thing about how I would like to come out of this kind of environment and moving into the new normal, if you will. How do we make that transition from a claims perspective? Because it's about delivering value on the customer experience and retention and things of that nature. But we all know when you think about client services, when you think about call centers, you think about claims, they're often kind of looked at as the end of the value chain. And how do we start to accelerate our proposition to being ahead of that value chain, where we're starting to amplify, what we bring to the table and how we deliver value to our firms in a different way?
Yeah. So it's a much of the same challenge. It's been around for a while, but again, it all gets magnified based on what you're sharing there. So, I start thinking about, for some people, it's more practical and where to even begin, or what are you doing to already works. And so I'm thinking, despite auto frequencies being down, I'm sure a lot of companies are glad that they started doing image lists.
Yeah.
So, some things are probably like, oh, this is perfectly aligned. Like, if we were all investors in Zoom, we would feel pretty good right about now too, because, the timing couldn't have been better. But I still hear too, some are challenged with just, using some of the tools that were already out there, like video collaboration, or, inspecting and things like that. So I just, I'm interested more to talk about, what's happening today that's working well, and how do you further expand that and increase the adoption? Because that's an easy way to kind of kickstart things too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, from a team perspective now, I've got several hundred folks in my organization, and, now we're virtually meeting every day. We're virtually having town halls, things that we would do in person, and we're figuring it out. We're starting to do things from a virtual perspective. That how do we now start to operationalize that from a claims perspective? So, when I think about, again, claims handling, can we start doing things more virtually to adjudicate that claim, to deliver that customer experience? And you know what, and think about the medical community right now, where people, Alan, 30 days ago would not have thought about trying to, consult with their doctor or getting that care over the phone or virtually. That would have been just off the table, not even considered. And now because everybody's in lockdown, people are, they need to get their medicine, they need to get their consults, they need to see the doctors. And so you see more virtual telemedicine capabilities starting to happen now. And I'm interested in how do we kind of utilize that piece of the puzzle in terms of making us more efficient if you want to start talking about building out those virtual capabilities. So, and I just don't think that it stops there. I think we have to start thinking even deeper and longer than that, how we can just really operate in this new virtual reality.
No question. And you even just think of the efficiency gain that can happen when you have an expert, in your example, a physician speaking with a patient. You really get to hear it right from the expert, and it does make you think. We do a lot by phone in our industry, and we play a lot of telephone tag, and things get lost in translation and so forth. And so, does a video interaction with consumers, does that increase? Some are already doing it. I know there's been some experimentation over in the financial services and retirement benefits and that, but does that become what consumers want? So it just makes me think, now is a perfect time for innovation teams to be considering where are things going. And then from a leadership perspective inside insurance companies, I think it's really important to give that line of sight and clarity to innovation teams to say, hey, here's really what we need to focus on and what we're trying to accomplish now that the world has sort of changed. So I just think if those things aren't happening, it's just a good call out to say, start to inspire them, because it's a good time to be doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also from a data perspective, I just wonder how, when you think about, business intelligence and how do we integrate data differently and more effectively, even in this space, starting to try to give thought to that, and how do those different components start to maybe unfold a little bit differently to give us different value, and how do we start to get, deeper insight into the consumer and pull all of that data, I would say, consortium together as we're starting to drive innovation, drive product development, and drive service, because I think that's an important piece of the puzzle that really starts and needs to evolve as well. Data is a very, very important component. And I think if we talk about self-service, if we talk about digital transformation, I just think, you need to really understand your consumers and where they are and how you can best serve them. And I don't know if, not just as an insurance industry, but I don't know if a lot of firms really maximize their value in that space and really just pulling all of that data together so you can really put the best product, service, and process together for your customers.
Right. And, probably going to come up on time here in a few minutes, but, you can start to think about how the product changes. So I think it's always been about knowing the consumer and customer needs and demands. And as those are shifting, the playing field kind of gets reset for every insurance company and every insurtech, I suppose. There's been a lot being said about usage-based insurance and telematics, which has been around for quite some time. But, does the change in drop-off in driving, change some product features, and therefore, what do the customers really want? And that may be another example of where getting to know them more and making sure we're filling their needs as they change becomes super important.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So again, as you said, I know we're coming up on time, but I just want to say before we close out, thank you so much for this conversation, Alan. This was a great discussion, gave you a lot of things to think about. And I always enjoy, and you and I, we know each other from prior lives, but I always enjoy having this conversation because I walk away with a little bit more to think about and a little bit more to consider. So thank you for the discussion. It was a really good time well spent.
Yeah, same here. I always learn so much about it. And then, you always get the comments and feedback from different people listening in, which I always welcome because it's a good conversation to be had. And not one person has all the answers. So the more we talk about it and share, the better everyone in our industry and community benefits. So likewise, I wish you and your family a safe, happy time now as we get back to trying to recover from all of this, and same for everyone out there. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks for listening.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
All right now.
Take care now.
Bye.